Hello and welcome to this episode of the Lyle podcast. I'm your host, Elle, and today what I'll be doing is not really discussing, but I'm going to do a reading from a book that I wrote. I self-published a book in about 2.5 years ago and released it without much fanfare and didn't really push for it. I had a ton going on in my life, divorce, things like that, um, I published it then. So I pushed through and did it. And was really proud of it. But just not really in a place to do much with it and just needed to, with art, sometimes you just need to create it and share it. And that's what I did. And what I'd like to do today, though, if you're on YouTube, here's the cover. So this will be an explicit episode because the title of the book is Holy Shit, by Elle Sierra Botrell. And you'll see on the cover just a cheeky picture of my backside. And it's Holy Shit, Musings and Self-Reflections of a Deconstructed Christian Faith from the Lived Experience of a Female Undercover Feminist, Midlife Crisiser, and Hopeful Mystic Contemplative. And today, I just wanted to read some of the foreword for you. Foreword. Writing while high is amazing. It is the best. I can tell, and I'm just starting the writing process. If it were not for this marijuana-induced intervention, I may have never written this book, or it may have just taken me much longer to get started. As it stands, I'm 40 years of age with an increasing itch to write, but not certain where it fits in my life. If you have known me for the first 40 years of my life, you're likely shocked by a number of things already, and we are just one paragraph into the book. The title, the subtitle, me writing with the intent to share publicly, me getting high, me writing while high, me writing about being high while writing. It is a bit new for me and part of the progression of my life. Where is this coming from and where is it going are appropriate questions for you if you have known me for years or decades, as well as for those of you who have only known me a shorter period of time, and even for those who are a total stranger to me. I have not always had the nerve to write, always not knowing how to start. Thoughts and concepts bounced around in my head, but hadn't taken form. Not other than occasional scribbles and essays that were not interconnected. I would share these occasionally on social media, as this was the only platform I had for sharing my thoughts. I was encouraged in my endeavors by the comments received, yet there did not seem a nexus about which to work and to expand my thoughts, and about which to center myself, my thoughts, my writings, and thus create a book. Art, music, science, the natural world, human souls, the formless, joy, patience, dreams, imperfection, they're all related. I wanted to write about such things, only because I had thoughts about such things and found them incredibly important and worthwhile topics. But what would this writing look like? Individual essays? Is the writing just for me or for others as well? If for others, how would I share? A blog? Would I call the blog? What would I call the blog? And how would people find me? Writing a book is not a task, nay, an adventure that I ever thought I would embark on. Yet here I am, and here we are together. Me writing and sharing, and you reading and receiving, and hopefully participating. We're doing it. Realization after realization is happening. Things are falling away, and new connections are being made. There is simultaneous convergence and expansion. Watch out for both and. With both and thinking and living, seemingly divergent things can rest side by side, simultaneously, and be in harmony. An odd couple kind of harmony. More on both and later. It is truly transformative. My judgments seem to have kept me away from becoming. from evolving, from paradigm shifting growth. You see, I hold judgment and possibly judgments about weed, so this book is off to an unusually contradictory start. But I will share more about this later. This book is a confessional of sorts. It does not detail events for the sake of recording them or detailing them. It is, in fact, the process of me coming to terms with the many judgments that have rested implicitly and explicitly all over my life. By reading these pages, you are coming along in this journey. My wish in sharing is that it is also useful for you on your journey. We all make judgments and have to make them quickly. When we walk into a room, when we say headlights or a stranger approaching on a dark street, when we meet someone for the first time, when we read the expression on someone's face, when someone is late, when someone says something that feels hurtful, we do it all the time. It is natural. Often, however, we do not take the time to examine our judgments and the foundations of beliefs on which they lie. Are these trustworthy judgments? Are they healthy or helpful judgments? Judgments have been a part of my attempt to handle changing and chaotic world. Judgments place us in a black and white, dichotomous operating mode without much, if any, room for gray. They are either or, which is much easier in the short term than both and. I do not think the world is two-tone. Two-tone is an incredibly harsh world. I think the world is painted in gradients and that the healthiest, most full living is found in the gray. By doing the work to navigate the tension of both and ways of thinking and being. Something can be both this and that. It does not have to be this or that. A good deal of thought patterns in my life have been along these stark lines. In those boundaries, I experienced and perceived safety and certainly confidence and sometimes self-righteousness. It gave me a solid foundation to build my life on, even if that foundation was not completely true. The perceived truth was enough to make decisions, act confidently, and sleep well at night. With this dualistic mindset, tricky situations became less tricky to navigate, if not downright easy. Rules are for breaking, or you have to know the rules to break them well, some say, and I'm inclined to agree. Rules are essentially judgments about appropriate behavior. Rules serve a purpose to help direct our actions and give us guidelines. But as we just discussed, the world is not black and white, nor is it simply gray. It is full of nuance and infinite detail and vibrant colors, even if messy at times. It is also not rigid. It is adaptable and evolving. Things that are don't remain indefinitely. There is a great deal of room for exploration, differences, and diversity. Our lives as part of the world also aren't fixed and boundaried. Many of the boundaries we face are artificial and many self-imposed. Painting inside the lines is boring. Our lives are works of art. I want to live a dynamic, creative life that follows the true rules, the natural laws, and not the man-made rules for social order and for the elite to maintain power and suppress and oppress people. We can train our minds. I've known this for some time. The truth will set you free, the Bible teaches in John 8, because knowing the Christ sets you free. Diving deeper and deeper for truth will lead to greater freedom. It leads to the source of light, to the light of the world. It is my path. It is the path. I want to drag my judgments from the implicit, subtle, and pervasive darkness to the light. Light exposes, darkness hides. I do not want to be in darkness. I do not want to partner with darkness. Darkness is limiting, effectively creating walls and boundaries that restrict me. I will allow the light to expose and overcome the darkness in me, to move beyond the darkness and break its power. I must acknowledge it, lest shame overwhelm and restrain me. This is a brave thing for me, an act of risky participation, jettisoning me into the great unknown and certainly to a point of no return. This writing endeavor is not a tell-all situation, but it is an unearthing, a weeding, a rooting out of all that is invasive and chokes out my vitality and my capacity to share life and light with those around me in the world I live in. This is not an emotional vomiting to get attention or money or power. This is a woman working to live as open-handedly as possible, following her journey of discovery to ever deeper truth. As I go to vulnerable places, I encourage you to do the same, to look at yourself in the metaphorical mirror and assess where you stand. What things in you, consciously and subconsciously, might be holding you back? Holding you back from your full and whole purpose, from your full and whole self, and from your capacity to fully love your family, your friends, your neighbors, strangers you encounter, and your enemies. So this book is centered on my judgments, which I first list in mass and then explore individually. This is not a chronological memoir, but a topical personal exploration. I've done my best to write this book with flow, the source of inspiration, as well as with the experience of the reader in mind. That being said, you can jump first to explorations that are most interesting to you. In doing so, realize you may miss some of my personal background, which might be helpful to your understanding of my writing. This will not read like a novel nor a traditional memoir, because it is neither of those. Nonetheless, may those that find these words and pages find what they need. Throughout these pages, you will find myriad and recurring references to the Bible. I've decided not to annotate them, as I don't want that to distract from the flow of the book. I'm sharing my experience and perspective arising from my Christian heritage. If you share this background, I expect you will easily recognize and understand these frequent references and imagery woven into the pages. If Christianity is not your background and something you know more peripherally, it may stir curiosity in you. If this interest arises in you, I invite you to perform a quick internet search to find the biblical sources and read about them in context. Dear reader, observe yourself as you read these pages. Can you relate to these judgments? Have you been hurt by subjudgments over the course of your life? What judgments do you hold that I don't? Our natural, unevolved instinct is judgment. Unless you have done and continue to do the work, you will not see your judgment and you will miss out on the journey. I have long aspired to be my best self. The work in these pages is future-oriented with past and present awareness. I believe this represents the most honest exploration to date of my beliefs, including my underlying and practice beliefs, and will cause positive change in me, not into a different person, but who I've been all along, who my Creator made me to be. We can do better to be the best version of ourselves by noticing our judgments, honestly spelunking into each one, and only then deciding if we should keep them, only then deciding if they are in line with our values and the advancements of life's work and our participation in it. Judgments will always be there, but let's consider them and determine whether to keep them in our lives or release them and transform them. I'm allowing you to come along as well, because while deeply personal and unique to me, this journey, it seems, is also a universal one that we all must embark on for greater enlightenment. That is, for greater faith, hope, and love. May we all have the profound knowing of these realities via experience, and thus share an ever-increasing measure with those that we come into contact. Deep breath. Here I, and here we go. And then I get into my judgments. So that's my foreword of my book, Holy Shit, Musings and Self-Reflections of a Deconstructed Faith from the Lived Experience of a Female Undercover Feminist, Midlife Crisiser, and Hopeful Mystic Contemplative. Thanks for listening to that. If that stirs anything in you, I'd love for you to purchase a copy of a book. If you know somebody that you think might be interested in it, I'd love for you to purchase a copy of the book. If you enjoyed my reading of it, I'd love to hear that, as right now there's not an audible reading of that and not an audible way to take in the book. I enjoy reading that, so if there's enough interest, I'd be happy to do that, to look into having not just the paperback version of the book, but also to have that available for you. And I'm also open to just continuing to do readings on here. That sounds exciting as fun. Well, thank you for being here. May you always see the blessing. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Lyle Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. If you liked what you heard, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at the Elle, as well as on my website, www.theelbetrell.com. Of course, you can find me back here at the next episode of the Lyle Podcast. There's numerous ways to support my work so I can keep helping you live your healthiest life. You can do this financially via links on my website or the show notes, by subscribing to the podcast and YouTube channels, by joining my newsletter community, aptly named the Lyle Newsletter, by rating the podcast, by sharing with others, those you meet, and participating in coaching sessions. It's my passion to help you live your healthiest life. I'm so glad you're here. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you're learning and the insights you're gaining from these conversations. May you always see the blessing.